Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, I am here with the man himself, Nakasuchi, Ronnie,
Matt Powell.
the man. We are the men.
What is up, you heathens and demons, you blasphemous, beautiful people? Welcome back to the Raging Atheist. I'm your boy Nakasuchi, and today I'm going to be releasing the so-called debate I had with hate preacher Matt Powell. And then I'm going to be done with Matt Powell for quite a bit. I'm going to go Matt Powell silent. I'm going to let him respond in kind. I'm going to let him release his movie. I'm going to get back to my normal routine once I move. I am moving in about 2 weeks, guys, so that's coming very, very soon. Continue to bear with me. This is going to be a long video because I've decided I want to release the entire debate all in one. I'm not going to talk too much about it. I'm going to not interrupt the debate. The so-called debate, you'll see it's not really a debate. It's two ambushes. He's trying to ambush me. I'm trying to ambush him. And I think you guys are going to see that. After the debate, I will comment on what I thought happened. But ultimately, you, the viewer, will decide who won the debate, who came out on top. I think it's going to be very easy for you to come to that conclusion. Real quickly, the first part of this so-called debate is recorded on my phone. It's going to be much like the confrontation I had with Matt on his homophobia. The visual isn't going to be very good, but you're going to hear the little interview he does to start out with me for his movie. And then after that, it'll go into the 2-segment debate. And the first segment is going to be him trying to ambush me on evolution. And then the second segment is going to be a broader discussion on atheism and morality. So without further ado, here is my last conversation with Matt Powell.
All right, so what is the number one evidence for atheism?
The lack of...
I'm going to sit here like this,
Yeah.
and you can kind of look at me in the camera.
All right, it's the lack of evidence that there is a God. I mean, it's easy and a no-brainer. For 6,000 years, that the assertion that there's a God has not been proven. A common misconception about atheists is that people like yourself will portray us as we denounce the existence of a God. A true atheist, a person that's come to a place of truth and on his path, doesn't do that. We don't know if there's a God. And I think that the term atheist has been convoluted by dictionary definitions. Atheist, it isn't that we don't believe in a God. We don't pretend to know if there's a God. But what we do know is that the stories have been proven false time and time again.
And why did you choose to be an atheist?
It's not a choice. I was a Christian, as you know, and I've been very honest about my Christianity. I think that I was a common Christian in America, as saying that we believed in Jesus, but we didn't go to church. We cursed, we smoked weed, we drank. My whole family did it. Every Christian I know is like that, except for the few which would have been more fundamental. It's not a choice. Once you wake up and you start reading books, once you start learning, once you start really asking your questions that you weren't allowed to ask when you're indoctrinated in the theism, those questions don't have answers, and if there's no answers, there's not a solution. Yeah.
All right, do you believe in evolution?
Yes.
All right. What is the greatest proof of evolution in your mind?
The thousands upon thousands of artifacts that we've found. We have proven, I know you guys like to think that evolution is still a theory. For one, you have a misconception of what a scientific theory is. A theory is not a guess. A theory is something that you pretty much know happened and that you're going to try to prove that. We've been able to prove evolution. It's a scientific fact, and I know you spend a great deal of time downplaying the scientific research, but you just can't. It's there. It's there. We have seen the migration 60,000 years ago of human beings out of Africa. We have the evidence to prove it. And I mean, you can claim that this fossil's fake, that fossil's fake, but not all of them.
Awesome. Good thoughts. Let me see here. How long have you been an atheist for?
About 15 years. I've been out for 4. I've been doing YouTube I've been a raging atheist for a year now. And up until a couple years ago, I only talked about it with a few close people. I never talked about atheism.
Awesome. Do you believe that man and dinosaurs lived together? Or do you believe that they were truly separated by 65 million years?
I think the evidence shows that they were separated by a huge amount of time. But do I believe that man and dinosaurs live together? Yeah. We live together with dinosaurs right now. Every bird in the sky is a descendant of the dinosaur. It's not the big lizards that you've seen on TV your whole life, or you went into the museums. We're still learning about the dinosaurs. As I told you before, and you laughed it off, we have discovered and have proven scientifically that most dinosaurs have feathers. All birds are descended from dinosaurs. This is scientific fact, and there's real evidence that backs it up.
So obviously you believe that birds are dinosaurs, and that's what the evolution community
They're
accepts.
the evolutionary offsprings of dinosaurs. Yes.
Okay. So you don't believe that? Do you believe that like a T-Rex and man walked together?
No.
Can you just elaborate on how you don't believe that?
History shows it. Evidence shows it. I know where you're going, and trust me. When I do my interview of you, we're gonna have a serious talk about it, because I know where you're going. I've studied the evidence. You've had to have studied the evidence. So what you're doing is you're ignoring the scientific findings, and you're grasping on to conspiracy theorists.
How active are you in atheism? And at this point, you can just plug your channel, kind of just talk to the camera.
I'm becoming more. I've always been more active in politics. I think I kind of alluded to that in our last conversation. I'm a huge leftist. I don't make any qualms about it. I've been involved. I was involved in the Barack Obama campaign here in Michigan in 2008, and I've been heavily involved in politics since. Like I said, the last 2 years, I've become open about my atheism. I've started the Raging Atheist, mainly to provide content for atheists. We live in a religious world. Almost anywhere you're going to live in this world, you live in a religious community. You're surrounded by religious people. We are an isolated group, so I try to make content for them. I'm not the atheist that's going to be nice about it, as you've seen. I am the atheist that is, I'm not trying to change minds. I'm speaking to my own.
All right. Do you believe religion is harmful or good?
Easy answer. It's very harmful. I think that it does do good. Nobody can argue against that, but I think the harm far outweighs the good.
Okay, we already did that. How about this? A good one. What do you think of Noah's flood? Do you believe it to be a myth? What are your thoughts on Noah's flood?
It's a myth. I mean, it's been proven to be a myth. I've studied your arguments, not yours, but creationist arguments on Noah's flood, and I have good evidence against it. There's been plenty of evidence against it. We have plants that are older than what you say the flood is. There's no way they'd still be in existence if the whole world was covered in water. There's no way that you've got 2 of each animal. And I know you're going to say kind, right? That's the big thing with creationism, 2 of each kind. But then you're actually embracing evolution on a much faster pace than I do as an evolutionist. So you're essentially saying that all of these animals that are alive today, right, have evolved into every single species, that they started with the 2 root of Noah's time. So it wasn't all of these animals on the boat. It was just the 2 of each kind of animal, and then they have evolved from there. if you argue that, then you're arguing for evolution at a much faster rate than any evolutionist is.
If evolution wasn't true, would you then believe in God?
No, my lack of belief on God doesn't revolve around evolution. What would change my lack of belief in God is evidence of God. You know, if an all-powerful, omnipotent being who has proven that he can be on this planet. If you go by your creation story, God was on the planet with Adam and Eve. He was a physical being. So why hasn't he shown himself in the 6,000 years since then? You know, why is there, you know, I'm not the type of person that's going to rely on 2,000 to 6,000 year old dogma or history. I'm going to rely on the information I can get now with the tools we have at our disposal now. Throughout human evolution, our tools have been the offshoot of evolution. We have grown as a species because of the tools we make, and each generation the tools get more advanced. It's how it's been, and it's how it always will be.
Okay, if the flood did happen and the Bible was scientifically accurate through and through, if everything in the Bible was scientifically accurate, you know, obviously how the Bible says that God sits upon the circle of the earth and stuff like that, if all of that came back as true, would you still be atheistic towards God?
If it, like I said, if it was proven true, I would go with the evidence. I would believe the evidence until further evidence came along that said it didn't. The problem is that not only has it not been proven true, it's been proven false time and time again. That's the problem.
Sorry if I'm smiling a little bit.
Oh, I'm sure y'all are loving it.
All right, so, and I'm not making fun of you. Like, I truly, you're a nice guy. Let me say this. Let me ask you this. You claim, and obviously in your last video that you put out on yours truly, you said that dinosaurs disproved the Bible. Can you just kind of like elaborate that?
Well, it just disproves the story. No, in our interview, you said that there's one way that something can become fossilized. I've researched that. That's false. It's not true. There's several ways something can become fossilized. And one solid rule for something to become fossilized is that it has to be at least 10,000 years old. It is not a fossil if it is not 10,000 years old. That is the rule that is followed. And so any fossil that you have ever found, dinosaur fossils, any other fossils, seashell fossils on Mount Everest, disprove the creation story.
All right, and then the last question was like, why do you believe in evolution? And if you want, just wrap it up here, like as to why you firmly believe evolution.
Quite honestly, I grew up with it in school, and I know you're going to use that, and especially right-wing Christians like to use secularisms of schools as an excuse. But I started to believe it because of what I learned coming up. And you went to school a lot sooner in time than I did. It was 20 years ago when I went to school. So they were, evolution, the information was just starting to come in. We didn't have the information we have now about evolution. It has only been proven more since that period.
And there's one more thing. I don't think what the question was. I know I didn't have it on this list, so if you're not comfortable answering it, I'm just trying to think of what it was.
You're not going to be comfortable with some of mine.
No. It's this one. Do you believe, because obviously the scientific community says that we all came from like a single cell organism. Mm-hmm. And we don't know how the single cell originated, but it's a self-replicating cell. Now, obviously, do you believe that all animals on the earth came into existence all at the same time, like in a creation setting, or do you think it happened slowly through adaptation?
Slowly through adaptation, but I mean, the thing about me is I don't pretend to know. Like, I know in our last conversation you said, isn't saying I don't know, like, the wrong argument to have, and it's not. If you don't know, nobody knows. We take guesses about prehistory. We try to interpret the writings on the wall, but we don't know. There's 1,000 million different possibilities about how life got on this planet. This planet could have been terraformed by aliens. I don't know if you saw my one of my rebuttal videos as a result of our interview was my Bible study on what the Gospels actually say. And if you saw that, you could see how very easily I showed a UFO encounter just using the Gospel's own words. So I mean,
So you believe in aliens?
no, I don't. I don't know. I have no idea. I think that the possibility of life outside of this planet is exponentially large. So yes, in that sense, I believe that there is life. I mean, we have found life in space. We found life on Mars, you know. But say an advanced being, would they know or have the technology to get from there to here? I don't think it's physically possible. Theoretically possible as far as what we humans know as of right now.
Thanks so much for coming out.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, so how long you been an atheist for?
About 15 years.
Okay, awesome. And so I guess, how did you become an atheist?
I started reading a lot of books. Well, first I started asking questions. And I had kind of drifted out of the Christian religion. I started really looking at my roots as a Native American. So I started practicing Native American spirituality. I worshiped Walking Tonka, the Great Spirit, you know. From there I went to Buddhism, and I just looking for different truths, and eventually I just started studying alternative histories. Books you may be familiar with, Holy Blood, Holy Grail, just looking at alternative narratives for the Jesus story, and I went from there.
Awesome, awesome. So obviously, you know, as an atheist, you would claim to believe in science, right?
Some science, you know, it depends on the science.
So it depends on the source of the science.
Well, yeah, you know, I'm not big into pseudoscience. I'm not big in, you know, I don't claim to be a scientist. I don't claim to be an expert on science. But yeah, I do research it.
Okay. So do you believe like in the theory of evolution?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. So like why? I guess my question would be, well, let me first tell you where I'm coming from. I believe that God created the world.
Yeah.
I believe that there's only two worldviews. Either one has to believe that somehow God created the world, like I would hold to, or you'd have to hold to another faith position, which is the world created itself. Your position is that the world created itself, correct?
No. I think I'm an offshoot of the universe. We're all offshoots of the Big Bang.
Right, but what you're saying is you believe natural causes brought about themselves.
I think there's a plethora of possibilities about how we came to be here. None of us know. There's no way to know how we came to be here. So whether we created ourselves, whether we came here, we've always been, who knows? I don't know. No, what we do know is that human beings showed up about 90,000 years ago. We've proven that. We don't know how we got here. We know one day we were there.
So obviously, you know, as an atheist, you would deny the flood, correct?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I would deny the interpretation of the flood. I would deny the story was a great part of the world covered in water. Yes, numerous times throughout the history of the world. In fact, Christians like to argue against climate change using the natural climate change of the earth. So most Christians have a fundamental understanding that the climate naturally changes, and periods of time of great heat, our Arctic shelf has slipped into the ocean. It's caused the waters to rise. We know this, yes.
Okay, awesome. So I'm going to challenge your worldview a little bit, like on the flood, on the subject of the Bible itself. I personally believe that the Bible is scientific. I believe it's, you know, historically accurate. I believe it from cover to cover, and I believe that all throughout the fossil record we find that the flood did take place. There was a catastrophic event that shook up the world. And some of the evidence that I'm just going to present to you, and you can try to answer it however you want. Most people don't like to answer this kind of stuff, but you are the type that will go at it, that will try to go against the argument. So obviously, this is a tree standing up. You know, obviously, when trees die, they fall down. They rot and they fall down. Correct. You know, I have trees on my property. They rot after just a few years of dying, and they fall down and they decay. A lot of times people pick them up, they become mulch. Well, obviously we have a tree here that stood. Now, from the evolutionary perspective, this tree stood for millions of years, and these layers are all different ages. They say, you know, Paleozoic, Mesozoic, all the way up to the human layer up on the top. But do you actually believe that that tree stood there for millions and millions of years, while the sun beat down on it for millions of years while the rock layers collected around it? Do you believe that? How do you suppose that got there, fossilized?
I'm not gonna pretend to know. Of course, I've seen arguments about this before. I know a lot of people are gonna argue, well, how did it get into all these different layers? I'm not sure. You know, many things could have happened throughout the years. What we don't know is nobody was there to record how this happened. That's what we do know. We also know that, yes, we study layers. This could have gotten there anyway. I have no idea.
Well, here's the thing. It's not just one tree. These are trees all over the world. So all over the world,
I'm sure if something's going to happen once, then it's going to happen again.
Absolutely.
But
would you say that that's evidence for a global flood, and the tree got there through a global flood, or would you say that that's evidence that the tree stood there for millions of years while sediment gathered around it?
Well, as I said, there's been.
Because here's the thing, there's only two options. Either you go with the option that says, okay, the tree stood there for millions and millions of years.
Not necessarily. As I said, the climate changes naturally. There's been several times, science has proven it, that water levels did rise. It doesn't mean that it rained for 40 days and 40 nights to create a flood. All it means is that the Arctic ice melted as much as it's doing now, but what's happening now is it's happening much faster than it's supposed to. So I mean, there is a plethora of possibilities. I'm not going to settle and say I know why this happened. That's the difference. I have no idea. I'm not a scientist. I can look at it and see, that any number of things could have happened. I understand that at certain points in the history of the world, the waters did rise. Never in the point of the history of this world did it cover the entire planet, and you're not going to cover the entire planet with 40 days and 40 nights of rain. It's impossible.
Well, the Bible says the waters shot up through the deep, so it wasn't just raining. Obviously, the Bible says the water sprung up through the deep. So
throughout the history of the world, the water has sprout up from the deep.
So like these fossilized trees, and there's thousands and thousands of them that go through every layer, which is supposedly millions of different ages. Mm-hmm. So I guess my question is, you could do one of two things at this point. You could claim ignorance and say, I don't know how it got there. Or you could, you could submit your idea of how you think it got there.
I've already offered one very plausible explanation of how it got there, and it's pretty much the same thing you're saying, but history shows that happened 50,000 years ago, the last time the waters rose that way. It didn't happen within 6,000 years. And the fact that this is a fossil, as you just said yourself, that these are all fossils, we know that in order to be a fossil, you're 10,000 years old. So this right here disproves the Bible.
Yeah, I want to just say on the set and on the record, I disagree. There's things that fossilize.
You can disagree, but that's the standard. The scientific standard doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what Matt Powell agrees to. There's a scientific standard.
Yeah. And well, here's the thing. I believe science teaches clearly that things can fossilize overnight. It's just like there's a
How
river
can it fossilize overnight?
Well, excuse me, not overnight. Overnight in the sense of obviously within a few years. Because here's the problem. A lot of people say, fossilization took billions of years to fossilize.
So you're the one person on this planet that knows better than everybody else.
It depends on your sources. And like you said at the beginning of our discussion, you believe that certain sources are valid, and you believe that certain sources are invalid. I believe that the historical account of the flood, through this polystrate fossil and through the thousands of fossils that we found, prove Genesis, that they prove the flood, and we are seeing the same thing.
The science doesn't show that at all.
The first part of the scientific...
Your belief and what is actual truth are two separate things.
Okay, I'm going to give you the scientific method for coming to this conclusion. Because everything is done through the scientific method. And let me ask you this before we jump on that boat. The first part of the scientific method is to make an observation. How has anybody observed an animal change from kind to kind? Because in order for something to be science, you have to be able to first make an observation.
I'm fairly certain Darwin's, the pigeons?
No, it's the birds.
The doves, whatever they were. We have, right now, human beings are evolving. We're changing. We're losing small, minute bones that we don't need. Evolution has been proven time and time and time again. Yes, we have observed this in nature. We observe it daily.
So have you ever seen an animal change from one kind to another?
I don't have to, and that's not how evolution works. That's how evolution works
science,
in your creation theory.
No, I'm going off of secular science. Secular science states that the first part of the scientific method is to make an observation. My question is, how do you observe? How do you observe these things?
You're warping the scientific method. It's observational and it's reliant on proof. Humans we have a very short lifespan. We're only here for what, 60 to 80 years? So how are we going to observe this? How did you observe this? If you're going to go by the scientific method, there's no observation for that.
Yeah, we do it based off the observations we make today. So for example, these polystrate, they're called a polystrate fossil because they go through different layers of strata. Poly means multiple, and obviously strata, straight, so polystrate fossils. So they go through all the different layers of strata. Now, what we're observing today is there was a flood that broke loose. And obviously the trees did the same thing in this area. And now they're all standing up, petrified, going through all the different rock layers. So we are observing that today. So when we look into the past, we're seeing the same thing, but we're seeing it worldwide, the Grand Canyon, worldwide events that shows the local
science has proven that the water levels rose. You're not what you're not proving is how did this fossilize in 6,000 years? You're not proving that.
we don't agree. Here's the thing, Nakasuchi. We don't agree on how long it takes for something to fossilize.
Well, you don't agree with. Here's the difference. You see, I don't pretend to know about what it takes. All I know is what I've researched. All I know is what the scientific community says. And you can't even classify something unless it's been dated back 10,000 years. Now, you yourself, in our last interview, acknowledged that carbon dating is extremely accurate up to 50,000 years. You acknowledged that. And by acknowledging that, you let slip that you don't believe in your own creation theory.
Well, here's the problem with what you're saying. I don't, and I never said on the set, and any of the viewers can go back and look at that set. I never said that I believe in carbon dating. I don't believe in carbon dating.
You agreed that it was extremely, my exact words, and I have it, I just posted it not too long ago. My exact words were, I believe that carbon dating is extremely accurate for up to 50,000 years. And you agreed.
Dinosaurs existed at the same time as man, and that carbon dating isn't accurate. And carbon dating is extremely accurate back to 50,000 years, I believe. And we know that most of these dinosaur fossils, if not all of them, go well beyond that.
I mean, that's pure and simple, but beyond that, carbon dating is not even what they mainly use because it is inaccurate after 50,000 years. You can tell a fossil is this age, and up to 50,000 years, you can't tell what's older than what. So we use, radiometric dating. I've studied all of this. We use so many different various forms of dating that you can claim that it's all bunk science, but you're not the guy coming out of Princeton with a degree in math either.
Well, here's the thing. We can appeal to authority all day. And it's not true that all scientists believe in evolution. There's tons of scientists.
There's a 97% consensus.
Okay, but here's what you have to understand about the 97% of scientists that they say believe in evolution. And try not to cut me off if you could here, because this is important for the viewers to understand. And it's also important for you, because you should know this. They say, 97% of academia believe in evolution. That's not true, because here's why. To be able to work for our public school system, you have to sign a waiver stating that you will teach evolution to your kids, whether you agree with it or not. And those are the same. Here's the thing, though. They use this. I'm talking about the scientific teachers. So they have to sign this waiver that states that I will teach evolution whether I agree with it or not, or they're out of a job. And those waivers are the same waivers that they use to say, 97% of academia believe in evolution. It's a fraud. And anybody that says, 97% of academia, look, I talk to most of these guys, a lot of them say it's stupid. A lot of them come at me and they're like, no, I don't believe in evolution, but I'm forced to teach it or I'll be out of a job.
Because most of the people in this country are religious. And I'm going to have to give you the same answer that godless engineer gave you. I have to. If you don't want to teach that criteria in that state, move to a different state. There's plenty of red state. You can go to Texas right now and teach that Noah was a real dude and Hillary Clinton never existed. And that's a thing right now. You can go there and teach that right now. So what you're saying is a fallacy.
Yeah, I disagree. Let's move on. So obviously throughout history, we've found, and you talked in your first video about archaeology, and you claim to believe firmly in archaeology. Now, I'm going to present to you a group of stones. There's over 11,000 of them that have been canonized, that have been proven to be true, proven to be accurate.
They haven't been proven to be accurate.
Here's the thing.
Let's not go
Hold on,
fallacies. We've got to establish a level of truth here.
You keep cutting me off. Here's the thing. I was about to explain that some people made some of them up. So they just, they took these drawings and made little replicas of them to make them look a little more enhanced.
No, I've studied this.
So you believe, that's not the truth. So this goes against Richard Dawkins and the scientific community.
Those have been pretty much proven to be a fraud, one. All right, and so let's talk about these stones.
Yeah,
what else besides dinosaurs do they depict?
So obviously,
you don't want to talk about that, do you?
What would you say they depict? What would you say?
I know what they depict. I know that this looks like a giant lizard.
That's proven to be accurate.
You're going to say what? That looks like a Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Absolutely.
Where's the small arms?
Just because every little detail, they don't have every little detail. But let me tell you this.
All right, so what else do these stones depict, though? Let's talk beyond the lizards. It also depicts UFOs. It also depicts aliens.
Hold on one second. We're on the set. I can't have you keep cutting me off. I'm not going to cut you off.
Well, I'm sorry, but we're having a discussion here. If you're going to promote a fallacy, I'm going to call you on it. I am the raging atheist. That's what I do.
Hey, you can call me out on my quote-unquote fallacies.
The
after I'm done talking. I'll wait for you to finish talking, and then you wait for me to finish talking, and we'll go back and forth. Does that sound good?
Whatever.
Like we did last time.
Yeah.
Okay. So these stones have been proven by the scientific community to be authentic. Now, there are some that have been made up that are not authentic, and obviously those are fraudulent. But in Dr. Cabrera's museum...
I think I said, that is not true.
Okay. Well, here's the thing. In Dr. Cabrera's museum, obviously we've got a Triceratops here. We've got, obviously, these things riding on the dinosaurs. These men obviously saw dinosaurs, and get this. Triceratops, raptor, brachiosaur, all carved on these stones, and these stones have been proven to be accurate. Now, over 11,000 of them, and they're all here at this museum. You could go to Dr. Cabrera's museum and pay to go in and see them. And you will find that they are accurate. The scientific community acknowledges them as accurate. And what Godless Engineer told me was that they were just bad artists. Okay. If you watch the video, he said, they were bad artists. And what I want you to notice about the skin pattern, and you say, why doesn't it have more detail on the claw? Well, look at the skin pattern, man. The recent discovery that's been made is we have fossilized dinosaur skin with the circular patterns on it. So this is just another proof. And the Bible says, and it comes down to this, the Bible says there's people who are willingly ignorant of the flood. And to be honest, after looking at this evidence, I believe that you have to be willingly ignorant. Your response?
All right. For one, as I've said repeatedly, these stones have not been found to be accurate. From what I found, the data is still out on it. But
so
as I said...
Do you disagree with Godless Engineer? Because Godless Engineer said they were authentic, but they were bad artists.
I think that Godless Engineer had no idea what he was talking about, and did what I did the first time we talked, which was give a reasonable explanation to it. But I actually looked into it since the last time we talked. I Googled it. It's very easy to Google, and that's what I was referring to before. You had to have Googled this information. You know that those stones depict flying saucers and UFOs. You know that those stones depict many different things outside of the reptiles. But beyond that, you also know that the dating isn't back on them, that the science is inconclusive on them. And I can't comment on something that the science is inconclusive on. I just can't. But I also know that what you're saying is inaccurate when it comes to the scaling of dinosaurs. Most large dinosaurs, we know now for a fact, did not have scaling. They had feathers. That's a proven fact now. And you can dismiss it and smile, but it's science.
All right. So I'm going to pull out my trump card now.
All right.
So Tech Times just came out with this article. And this is the title of the article. This is a secular source. It says, and these are doctors from Harvard, some of the best universities around. And this just came out a couple months ago. It says, massive genetic study reveals that 90% of Earth's animals appeared at the same time. It says, landmark new research that involves analyzing millions of DNA barcodes has debunked much of what we know today about the evolution of species. In a massive genetic study, senior research associate at the Program for Human Environment at Rockefeller University, Dr. Mark Stokel, and University of Basel geneticist David Thaler, Dr. Thaler, discovered that virtually 90% of all animals on the Earth appeared right around the same time. More specifically, they found that 9 out of 10 animal species on the planet came into being at the same time humans did. This conclusion is very surprising, says Dr. Thaler, and I fought against it as hard as I could. So this doctor is saying, look, I fought against it as hard as I could, but I could not deny the evidence.
So, where's this article from?
Tech Times.
Tech Times.
Leading science website.
Never seen it. Don't know anything about it. Can't comment on it. Have no idea. Are you trying to? Is this your genome degrading argument?
No, this has nothing to do with genomes.
All right, because we can talk about that if you want. I know about that. I have no idea.
At the beginning of our discussion, you said to me, you're like, oh, why don't you agree with science? Well, which scientists are you going to go with? Are you going to go with the ones that just made the discovery that debunks much, according to their words, about what we know about the evolution of species? Or are you going to go with somebody like Ernst Haeckel, the founder of evolution, who stated, and I quote, "Spontaneous generation must be true, not because it was proven in the laboratory, but because otherwise it would be necessary to believe in God."
I haven't studied Haeckel. One thing I'm going to know, one thing I have to say, and I have to debunk, is you say that you gave a very vague answer when I said 97% of the scientific community agrees with evolution. Now, you can find one of that 3%, or you can say that teachers aren't allowed to teach outside of evolution. The teachers aren't scientists. What I'm speaking of are the scientists on the field, the scientists on the ground, the archaeologists, if I could speak, I need something to drink. But you know what I'm saying, the archaeological findings, the paleontologists, the dating, all the science, there's a consensus. I'm going to go with consensus. I'm not going to go with the crazy conspiracy theories.
But this isn't a conspiracy theory. This is a scientifically proven fact that just came out.
How is it a science? For one, like I said, I don't know about it. I've never heard about it. So until I can verify that it's a scientific fact, I can't comment on it.
Here's the thing. Nobody wants to talk about it. And in fact, Dr. Thaler said, I fought against this as hard as I could because I wanted to believe in evolution. But the thing is,
we live in and I'm not trying to cut you off, but we live in an age of information. See, the intellectual laziness, not trying to find out for yourself all of the information. Yeah, I will definitely look into that, and I'll respond to it when I know about it. But what I have researched is that the data's in. 97% of the scientists agree with evolution. Now, I don't know. Like I said, we can't possibly know what happened at the beginning. We can't. But what we do know is that these stories, this 6,000-year story, this myth that this planet is so new, has been scientifically proven false.
Okay, well, I just provided scientific evidence that actually proves the flood, proves the Akkadian stones, and all throughout science we have,
like in 1987, some conspiracy theories.
In 1987, they discovered a brachius on the swords of the ancient Vikings, a brachiosaur. And so obviously they've discovered these things, and so for somebody to say, like in your position, oh, the dinosaurs, they died out 65 million years ago, pulling out the big numbers, I believe that that is unscientific. I believe that it goes directly against archaeology, and in fact, since you bring up archaeology, I'm going to pull out another one of my trump cards. We can find it here. Let's see. Oh, here we have it. So obviously when dinosaurs die, they either decay or, in some cases, they fossilize and they're dead. And within just a few years of being dead, your blood is going to completely go away. Your blood isn't going to stick around.
Depends on how you're fossilized.
Absolutely. Get this. A full blood vessel of a dinosaur discovered. And it was not an area that was airtight. This was an open area air. This was an area that was open to air. So we have blood of a Tyrannosaurus Rex that was discovered inside this grave of the dinosaur. Now, if it was 65 million years extinct or before us, how did that blood remain the same in an open air environment?
Well, again, I don't know. This is not a talking point of yours that I'm familiar with, so I didn't research it. But I'm sure that if I do, as I did with most of the stuff you say, that it's going to be proven false. And I can't say that with
this is from a
certainty
source.
right
this
now.
This is Dr. Mary Schweitzer.
Well, and I'll find that out when I research it. Hopefully, I'm getting all of this so I can come back and research it. But I have looked into many of your claims, and all of them are false. So I'm not going to be surprised when your stones. That's a false claim.
But here's the thing: we disagree on that.
No, see, Yeah, you can.
Why would they have a whole? Why would a secular group? And these guys, mind you, these guys believe.
We don't know that they did it.
Here's the thing.
We don't know that. They could be a forgery. And
Let me
that's
explain.
not what you're admitting to.
Let me explain, because you can research this too, and you'll find that it's a secular group of scientists that made the discovery of the Ica stones. They're in Dr. Cabrera's Stone Museum right now as we speak. So you're the one that's denying the evidence.
Let's say that they
because
are
it's been
true.
accepted by the scientific community.
It hasn't been, because I looked that up. But
it's a good conversation. We can do this. It's good.
Beyond that,
do you want to start cutting me off?
let's say that they are true, right?
Say that again.
Let's say that the stones are true, that they cut, the evidence comes back and everything checks out. What those stones depict isn't going to back up your creationist story, because those stones depict aliens coming down. I mean, quite clearly. So, I mean, while you can hang on to these stones if you want, and if the science does come back and prove that they're real, I'm not going to say that they're not. I know I did see a lot of people saying that the science is back and they're not real. I haven't verified that for myself. But if you go with these stones directly go against your creationist story that one God created all of humankind. It shows aliens, and we've had this conversation. The whole idea of a God to begin with is alien in nature.
So you say that aliens would be perfectly depicted on these stones, but not the dinosaurs.
No, I'm saying that it's quite clear.
So you're saying they're better?
I actually said that it looks like dinosaurs. I said that. You know, I said T-Rex doesn't look like T-Rex because we all know that T-Rex have very short arms. But I said that they do appear to depict dinosaurs. What I did not admit to that this is science that has come back and been conclusive. And I also have studied the stones and know what else they depict. And that's not what you're saying. You're not including that part.
All right, then. So, can you go down with it? Like, sorry.
All right, no problem.
All right, yep. Because the viewer.
No, yeah.
But anyways, so let's step in a little bit to like the morals of atheism.
Yeah.
Obviously, as an atheist, where do you find truth? Where do you find your morals at?
Just inside myself. You know, I think we inherently know what's right and wrong. I think most people don't have connections crossed in their brains to where they're evil. You don't need a God not to be evil. You know, I know how I portray myself on my channel. I get called a bully. I disagree with that. I think that if you're going to put yourself out there, then you're going to open yourself up to criticism. But outside of my channel, I try to be a good person. You know, I raise my daughter. I've got a great daughter. She's wonderful. She just loves everybody. She's a lover. She's a healer. And I did that without any foundation of God. You know, now she personally believes in God because of my mom. And I was at a point in my atheism to where I wasn't going to combat that. But, you know, it's not fundamental, and she doesn't really understand it. And I've raised her without it.
So you find your morals in yourself.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is basically like morals are subjective.
I think that some morals are subjective. I think that there are universal truths, like, you know, we all understand that you're not going to go out and kill somebody. You know, I would argue that your Bible isn't moral.
Let me ask you this. If I decided in my moral system, in my subjective system, that I wanted to go out and murder somebody, God forbid, what moral basis would you have to say that that's not right?
Well, I mean, it's the consensus of humanity. It goes against.
But how can you have that basis? I guess my question is, how do you have a basis?
How can you not have it?
Well, here's the thing. How do you have any sort of basis outside of God? People ask me all the time. They say, "Oh, you know, how can you special plead God?" I always tell them, "You special plead no God." Because here's the thing. When it comes to morals, without God, there is no morals.
You're wrong about that.
Okay, where do we get our laws from? How do we determine what is right and wrong?
We just always have. Before God, the primitives before 10,000 years ago, when religion first came on this planet, the idea of religion first came on this planet, and it wasn't Yahweh. It was pagan gods. They were often dark gods that required human sacrifice. But before that, there was no God. You don't, to say, I mean, what is your proof that you have to have God to have morality? What evidence of that do you have?
I'm going to turn this back on you and ask you another question. Do you believe that there is absolute moral truth?
No.
So you're absolutely sure that there are no absolutes?
I think that there's absolute moral truth to each and every individual. My absolute moral truth is going to be different than
So let me
yours.
get this straight. Let me get this straight. You're saying that you're absolutely sure that there is no moral absolutes.
I'm not saying that at all.
Well, you just told me that
the
you
whole
don't
point of
believe in
this
moral-
conversation is that I don't pretend to know.
Okay.
Without any evidence of anything, I don't pretend to know. All I can go is based upon my own personal experience. I myself am proof that you don't need God for morality. I don't go out killing. I don't go out raping.
Okay, but you say I'm proof that I don't need God to have this morality.
Any person
well,
like me is
you told me
proof of that.
earlier in this conversation that you don't know if we came from God or not.
Who knows?
Okay.
Who could know that?
But there's only two possibilities. Either God created the world or the world created itself.
No.
Well, then give me another possibility.
The universe shoots us out. The universe has a mind of its own, and it creates life. It creates galaxies. It creates individual systems for life to expand. It could be a number of things. To say that there's two possibilities is a fallacy.
Okay, let's talk about the Big Bang then, because you say that the universe could shoot out here and energy could shoot over there. Since when do you see a Big Bang or an explosion creating anything? Have you ever observed that?
I'm not an expert on explosions.
Like for example, a computer. I build computers like this iPhone down here. Like if I said, oh, I believe that iPhone came about by just an explosion, in a Mac store, you would look at me and say, you're an idiot. But that's the atheistic worldview, is that, oh, well, it could be anything but God.
Well, no, I mean, we do know that explosions create different atmospheres.
I guess my question is, do you believe that an explosion out of chaos produced order?
Out of chaos. Whoever said that an explosion out of chaos? From
one out of 100,000 millions chances is chaos.
So you say. From
Well,
what I've
mathematical.
read of the Big Bang, it wasn't like this thing of chaos. It was an empty space that consisted of matter and dark matter. Matter touched dark matter and created an explosion.
So do you accept the mainstream idea of the Big Bang, where all of the matter in the universe was condensed in a period on a page, basically, in size? Do you accept that?
As I've said, I'm not an evolutionary expert. I'm not a scientist. I'm an atheist. I'm a regular dude. I accept that the Big Bang is one of the possibilities. I also accept that I can't give you a definitive answer. I know this happened because I didn't exist. How long ago? 60 billion years ago. I wasn't there to see it. You weren't there to see it. But what we do have from the Hubble telescope is images from what they claim to be the Big Bang. Now, whether or not that's true, I'm not going to sit here and pretend to know.
Okay.
But if it is true, what they didn't see there was God.
Let's talk about the origin of life. Obviously, for evolution to be possible and for things to come into being with such precision, it would take a decision. Obviously, the sun is burning down, the moon is getting further away, the earth is slowing down in its rotation. Mm-hmm. Somebody wound things up very precisely. And if any one of those quantities were tweaked at all, no life could exist. Yeah. So now let's talk about life itself. So life requires, for just one cell, it requires 30 mechanisms to be able to work. Now, if we stick those 30 mechanisms all together, let's say, for example, you and I went to a lab and I said, okay, we're going to throw DNA, RNA, and even some membranes in a can of soup. We're gonna put all this together, and these are things that contain life. These are what life is made of. This is what life is made out of: is DNA, RNA, and membranes. Mm-hmm. If I was to put all that together, it would not create life. And in fact, they've never created life. So let me ask you this.
So you're saying scientifically we've never created life?
Well, even if we did create life, wouldn't that mean there was an intelligence behind it?
Well, in that situation, yes.
Well, that situation would have had to taken place at some point in history.
But I mean, there's...
So you're telling me there's intelligence that created life?
No, I'm not. I'm saying that I have no idea what created life. And I'm not going to pretend to know, and I'm not going to force it, or
well, you could at least say
I'm not going to say that you must dictate your life to this theory I have about how it all started. I'm not going to say that.
Well, at least you could say it's more plausible to believe in intelligence, because by your own admission,
I don't think so.
Okay, does it take intelligence to create life? Yes or no?
I would need evidence. I mean, where is the evidence that it has to take an intelligence to create life? I
Because
don't
it's
understand
because it's
that.
never been done. If we put all of the elements that are contained in life together, it would not create life.
You know what else has never been done?
What's that?
God showing himself. God showing up right here. Right here. He's omnipotent.
Okay.
He is the master of the universe. Why isn't he here saying, Nakasuchi, you're wrong?
Right. So we'll go there. So the Bible says that God spake, as in times past, through the prophets.
The
So
Bible
God-
says that.
Yeah, the Bible says, and I hold to the Bible.
You
I
hold
hold to
it.
the Bible.
So I hold to science, and I say that that's rubbish.
Okay, well, let me
Completely
say this.
rubbish. If you hear a voice in your
Okay.
head, we have a word for that.
So you're
now.
saying you don't believe in God because you can't see God.
I'm saying that they didn't understand mental illness.
Okay, your question, let me answer your question. Your question is, oh, how do I know that this place is created when I can't see the creator? That's like me asking, oh, I don't know, who sculpted this, so because I don't know, therefore it was not sculpted. It's the same logic. Absolutely.
No, it's not.
Okay, explain how it's different.
We know that statue was created by something, and you can research that something. You can find that something. If he's still living, you can go talk to that something. You can't do that with God.
It's the same thing with God.
It's quite different. If you have that reliable source, that root source, you have that human being there
Here's the
that
thing.
created it. Now you talk about the moon. You talk about that a lot, and you claim that it's proof that God designed us, and it's not. It's proof that maybe something terraformed this planet to tune it precisely. Proof is evidence, and there's no evidence saying that God did it. None. If there was, I would not be an atheist. If he cared so truly about this creation that he loves so much, why is there poverty? Why is there starvation? You talk about the moon going away from the earth and how in a million years that would mean that all life would be gone. That is a fallacy. That is not true. I've researched it. At the rate that the moon is going away from our planet, it would take billions upon billions of years for life to be gone. Billions upon billions.
I want to answer your question about, well, why is there poverty? Why is there bad things? There is no way.
Why is there 1,000 different religions? Why has there been so many religions forgotten? The only difference between me and
you've just heard people tell you, oh, there's thousands of different religions. You've been listening to Richard Dawkins, who says, oh, I think
I've studied the Nordic lore. I've studied the Islam is there, Buddhism is there. There's all the hundreds of pagan religions that sprung up during the Roman Empire.
Let me explain the difference between the two world religions. I believe there's two. Most people will say, oh, there's billions and billions of religions, just like billions and billions of years. Well, hold on. Most people are trying to work to get up to God. Most people are trying to do enough good things, live a good life to be able to make it to God. But the Bible teaches us, and true faith in Christ understands that God actually came down to our level because he loves us. And you talked earlier, you said, oh, how could God love a speck of dust like us? Well, that's what the Bible says. The Bible says that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us.
Do you trust everything that was written 2,000 to 6,000 years ago?
Absolutely.
Everything.
As far as within the biblical canon, yes.
So the biblical canon, you think that slavery is okay?
No.
But the Bible does. Jesus
No,
did.
okay, yeah. No, that's not true.
Oh, yeah,
that's not,
it's very true.
That's not true. It's amazing. All the atheists pull this card on me. Oh, slavery's true. Well, hold on.
Well, that's just one.
Okay, hold on. If we were in a time of war and I had to take somebody captive so they don't slit my throat, is that slavery?
But that's not what the Bible says.
That's what the Bible says.
No, it's not. The Bible gives you strict rules on how to treat your slaves.
Here's the thing.
The Bible says if he's not a Jewish slave, you got to let him go after 7 years. You can't hurt him to a certain extent.
It's a completely different translation that came out of Alexandria. I don't believe in that Bible. I believe in the King James Bible. I believe the one.
All of it's a translation, but even the King James Bible says this. Jesus.
You may want to shut up now because I'm going to hit you hard on this.
Please do, because explain it.
All right. Yeah, I will say in the documentary we might hit you up on that a little bit. But,
do it, please.
Here's the thing.
Explain slavery.
The Bible does not condone slavery.
I'll make a video with every Bible reference to it. All right, take away slavery. Do you believe that you should stone your wife to death for committing adultery?
I do believe that the Bible puts a death penalty on certain things.
So you think a woman should be stoned to death? Why?
For what?
For being a human being?
No.
Or because she didn't follow some law? I mean,
here's the thing.
Let me ask
you this. If somebody goes and kills somebody, is that right?
No.
Should that person be put to death?
Not in any circumstance.
Should that
I
person
don't
be put to death?
agree with-
If somebody puts somebody to death for no reason and they murder that person, should that person also be put to death?
I don't believe in putting anybody to death.
So should that
The
person
only-
at least,
the only
should,
reason-
okay, should that person spend some time in jail?
Sure.
Okay, so let me ask you this. If that person goes to jail, what moral basis do you have outside of a lawgiver? If you have a law, you have to have a lawgiver. What moral basis do you have to say this person needs to go to jail?
Because your moral basis is what your community decides.
So it's
not
just
what
based on
God-
feeling?
No, it's based on what your community decides is right and wrong. That's what a community does. You know, when you create laws, it's the consensus of the community.
Yeah. Do you know who gave the laws of physics? We have to ask these questions. So there's laws in physics.
As far as I know, the scientists that came up with them. Now, whether or not
But they have existed before science.
maybe they did, you know, but you know, to say that something had to create, how do you know the universe doesn't have natural laws? You don't know. There's no evidence of it. You give me evidence that God created the natural laws of physics, which I'm not going to pretend to understand or even know the first thing about, then I'll be with you.
Well,
but there's no evidence.
Let's talk about we won't get into the deep laws of physics. Yep, that's fine. We won't talk about the deep laws of physics. Let's talk about the very first law of thermodynamics. The first law of thermodynamics states that matter cannot be created or destroyed.
And I agree
And if at
wholeheartedly.
one point there was no time, no space, no matter, how did it get here? Outside of realm outside of natural laws.
The Big Bang. We've already discussed that. There was an open space, there was a vacuum, there was matter and antimatter.
No. You're missing it. There was no matter. There was no time. There was no space.
That's what you say.
That's what the scientific community says.
No, it's not. The scientific community says the Big Bang came from matter and antimatter meeting.
So you believe that the universe is eternal now?
I think that the universe is expanding, and when it comes to the lifespan of the human being, yeah, it's eternal. Yeah, we are very, very finite creatures. The fact that our lifespan alone is 60 to 80 years is guaranteed of inaccuracy of history. We weren't there. That's all I maintain. And I'm not going to base my life off of something and have to live with these moral restrictions, as you would like to say, to where I need to do a certain thing, to where I need to hate a gay person in order to be a good human being, to where I need to stone a woman to death. That is not morality. That is the opposite of it.
But what if I felt that way even outside the Bible? What if my moral system said, oh,
Then
this
you
is
would
how
be
I feel?
going against the moral standards of given society. If you want to, you could go to a Muslim society and be perfectly okay with those beliefs because society accepts those beliefs. You're right along the lines of the Islamic, most of the Islamic community when it comes to this with your fundamentalism. You can go to these societies and it is perfectly okay to kill me as an atheist. Perfectly okay because God says it's okay. Well, I call,
That's actually not
I'm
what-
sorry, bullshit on that.
Here's the thing. The Bible never actually says to put the atheist to death.
But
The
your
Bible says
religion
that
has.
the Bible says that certain people that commit a capital crime should be put to death.
Well, I
According
do
to the
think that
Bible.
there is a phrase about blasphemers being put to the torch.
I'm going to bring up one more thing. I'm going to bring up one more thing, and then we're going to cut these cameras. We're going to shut it down, and then we're going to go into yours.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So,
You're at 0 on
Alright,
this last
that's
camera.
fine.
That
All right.
one's
So it
done.
says massive genetic study. I'm going to bring this up again. This is a secular article. It says massive genetic study reveals that 90% of Earth's animals appeared at the same time. It's from Dr. Thaler, obviously from Rockefeller University, and also University
actually,
of Baylor.
you know
so
what?
do you believe
Now that
this is a possibility?
Now that you're saying that, I might have to read that article. Yeah, it's a possibility because evolution says that Africa was a cradle of life, and I'm not going to say I believe that, but I'm going to say if there is evidence to it, I could believe it because I know what evolution says. Evolution says that Africa is something special about it. Right up until it dried up about 60,000 years ago, which forced us out to migrate. Yes, I would say that a plethora of species could come into existence in a cradle pot of creation.
Okay. Before we close out, I'm going to bring this up one more time. You admitted that this happens during floods.
Yeah, I would definitely admit that science has proven that we have had several And you want to call it floods. I'm going to call it climate change, and I'm going to call it rising sea levels. It's completely different. A flood means that you had water coming down from the skies to cover the planet in rain and in water. And
but you know that this specifically came from the flood.
I understand that science says that could have been done as much, just like your seashells, because of rising water levels. Yes.
Okay, but this is in the top of the Grand Canyon.
And this Grand Canyon argument,
on top of the Grand Canyon.
You know this. The Grand Canyon argument has been argued on both sides. It's a stalemate. You know it.
You would at least agree that it could be like a stalemate where creationists may.
I'm not discounting the possibility of high water levels. What I am discounting is that Noah was 900 years old, and that it happened in that short time ago. And I'm also discounting that kangaroos came from Australia, so you know.
And there we have what was supposed to be a debate on evolution, but as you can see, was a very tense, combative discussion that I had with a hate preacher trying to give absolutes through the whole thing. You know, there's only two ways that blah, blah, blah. No, dude, that's not how it works. You don't get to dictate what is and what isn't just because Matt Powell's existence and what Matt Powell thinks must be. That's not how things work. I think I crushed a kid. I'll let you decide on that. But for a real second in reflection of this debate, I just want to kind of empathize with what Matt Powell thought he was going to get out of this for his movie, because he admitted to me offset that in this movie he wants to prove that evolution is wrong. And, you know, without evidence, you can't prove anything. But how he wants to do it is by using all this misinformation and false information and, you know, pseudoscience, conspiracy theory bullshit. But I want to empathize, you know, because based on our last discussion, he thought he had somebody that was going to be nice and friendly with him, just like I was the last time. You know, he's probably looked at my channel and seen that, you know, my content, I'm not really giving you the arguments or trying to be overly intelligent and prove how smart I am. I'm just mainly talking shit. So I think he went into this thinking that he would be able to present all of this so-called evidence and change my mind on camera. He thought he was going to be able to change the raging atheist from an evolutionist to a creationist. And we should all take a moment and just laugh at that crazy shit. I mean, just laugh at it. It's hilarious. And without doubt, I obviously come off as the one that has morality. Now, I'm not going to claim that I was right with everything that I said in this debate. He did ambush me with stuff that I had never heard of before. But I think I obviously come out the victor, and I'll let you guys be the ultimate judges of that. And I decided to go ahead and put this out. Now, I do want to make a correction. At the beginning of this video, I said, you know, in 2 weeks that I am moving. By the time I actually put this out, I might have already moved. So, I just wanted to correct that. But, I wanted to give Matt, I decided to put it out instead of holding it until he releases his movie. Because I want to give him a chance to be honest. You know, don't twist my words, Matt. Don't edit me to make it look like I say a thing I don't. Because, you know, the full debate's out now. And you're just going to make yourself look like a liar. But I think that you are so driven to prove evolution wrong, even if you have to do it falsely, that you'll twist my shit anyway. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. As always, I'm your boy Nakasuchi. This is The Raging Atheist. I'll see you soon.